Welcome back, my friends. This is the last segment of our PMP exam fast track, and this is where we're taking a look at the business domain. And the business domain is all about how project management and business mindedness connect to enable you get to the end goal, the definite chief aim. So in order to do this, you have to be business minded. You got to be able to think more strategically. You got to be able to think in terms of the bottom line. You got to be thinking value, profits, revenue. You got to be thinking ROI, net present value, internal rate of return, payback period. Those are some of the things you should be thinking about. So, as opposed to just thinking in a tactical way, in this domain, you got to think business. You got to be thinking strategically. Some of the things that are going to help you in the business area. First of all, you need to understand the concept of a needs assessment. Okay? Google that and understand a needs assessment assesses the need and validates if indeed a project is necessary. Then we have a business case that makes a case for the project. The business case is like a lawyer in a court of law defending a client. So we got to defend the project. Why the project? And in a business case, we generally have an A, a B, and a C option. A very good business case will have A, B, C. Maybe B and C won't be done. A is the chosen option, the chosen solution, but we also understand why. Then we also have the concept of a benefits management plan. We also need to understand the concept of a benefits owner. We need to understand the concept of higher level risks that can impact the business, that can impact the project, but higher level than just individual project risks. We also need to understand the concept of return on investment, net present value, IRR, internal rate of return, BCR, benefit cost ratio, and payback period. These are all very helpful for business mindedness. You also need to understand the concept of compliance. The risk of not being in compliance, penalties for non-compliance. Okay? You also need to understand, and I'll just continue over here, the concept of change management. And I'm talking about at the organizational level, not at the project level, but at a higher level. And to be quite honest, this is not tackled well in a lot of books. But in PMP exam Immersion, the red book, written by my buddy Roy and I, it has a very detailed account of business mindedness, business lingo, the whole idea about strategy. It's covered very thoroughly. And the concept of Porter's forces. So if you haven't heard of Porter's forces, it's definitely a topic you want to be aware of as a business person, as a professional. It will help you. So just Google Porter's forces. I think I've got a video about it on my individual channel, but just look for some understanding of these things I'm telling you. And then if you have the PMP exam immersion book, this stuff is in the book. Okay? So as far as the business aspect is concerned, like I said, compliance, also regulatory, the concept of being in compliance with regulations, things like that. Okay. And also here, you want to have a mindset, an idea of, the impact of culture, company culture. Okay? And these are definitely topics that I would suggest. Now, it's just 8% of the exam, but 8% for some people could actually be the tipping point. This could be the difference between success and failure. So you do need to take it seriously. Okay? That's pretty much it. Pretty quick, huh? Well, we spent 17 minutes in people. This one, I think we spent about 5 minutes. And then process, just that took all the time in the world to go over. But, I could flesh out these topics a whole lot more for you, but this has to do more with a lot of reading and absorption. One more aspect that I would recommend, as far as the business aspect is concerned, you got to think like a product owner, because the product owner is thinking of value, right? Product owner is thinking of value and benefits, right? They're thinking of revenue. It's another good word, revenue, you know, value and benefits. And you can also think about profits, right? Very important. Value, benefits, profits. Because when you're taking a look at your backlog, remember the business environment is not just for predictive, it's for agile as well, and it's also for hybrid. So when you come at this domain, you also need to understand from a hybrid perspective the different models that exist. The first model is we do a little bit of agile followed by a predictive rollout. That could be one model. The second model could be what I call an agile predictive sub. Agile and predictive, we're doing those at the same time for different segments of the project, but that's the second model. The third model is a whole lot of agile, a whole lot, and a tiny pocket of predictive, right? Just a small piece of predictive sprinkled in there. The next framework, or titration, I should say, is predominantly predictive, but we got a little bit of agile sprinkled in there. This could be like a daily scrum or some other agile way of working sprinkled in there. So when it comes to business, you also need to keep in mind not everything is a straight ahead predictive or straight ahead agile. We could have the world of hybrid, and this is talked about, I believe it's page 27, 29, thereabouts, in the Agile Practice Guide. In my course, tinyurl.com/elite PMP, we cover the entire Agile Practice Guide. So if you have not digested the Agile Practice Guide and some of what I'm saying is like Greek to you, definitely hunker down on that. One other place in the Agile Practice Guide that you need to understand is where we have that table, right, that breaks down the delivery approaches. So we have predictive, we have iterative, we have incremental, and then agile. Excuse me. And then agile, right? And then we have different variables talked about. But the one I really want to get into is the delivery. The delivery, right? The delivery frequency. When it comes to the delivery frequency, predictive is one time. Iterative is one time. Incremental is frequent, smaller deliveries. Agile is frequent, small deliveries. Okay? When it comes to the aspect of change, as far as the change, right here in iterative, we're going to repeat till correct. Agile, we're going to repeat till correct. For incremental, as far as the execution, the changes are minimal, right? As far as incremental is concerned. And for predictive, as far as the change is concerned, it's also at a minimum. It goes through change control. Now, while this section isn't in the table itself, there's another image that shows on this continuum, you have the two dimensions, and then you have something that looks like this. And you have, it's called the continuum of life cycles. I'm going to draw it for you here. And it's definitely one that you want to be aware of. So we have two axes. We have the degree of change, and then we have the frequency of delivery. So the one that has the low degree of change is predictive. And then above it, we have incremental. You see what I'm saying? And then the one that has the high frequency of delivery, agile, high frequency of delivery, incremental as well. But in terms of high degree of change and low frequency of delivery, we have iterative. So when you understand this continuum of life cycles, it helps everything come into perspective. It gives you a laser-focused understanding that predictive is a one-time delivery, frequency of change is low. When you take a look at incremental, a lot of people get incremental wrong. Incremental is a low degree of change because it's for a very well-defined product that doesn't have to change as much. That is the thesis for incremental. But if it does need to change and we do need to deliver frequently, then agile is the better mousetrap. Okay? So far, my friends, we've been taking a look at the business domain and everything else connected. For business, think like a product owner, think value, think benefits, think outcome, think about dealing with risks, think about dealing with compliance. You got to have an elevated awareness of your responsibilities and accountabilities. Okay? I hope you found this helpful. As usual, smash that like button, and I'll see you in a future episode where we have our big wrap up. We're going to be going through all of the tasks. I'm going to go through them one by one at a very high level, but that's going to give you some further understanding of how to position yourself as you prepare for this exam. I'll see you there.